It's kind of like, you ever watch Bugs Bunny Roadrunner cartoons? So the cliff breaks away and Wile E. Coyote's standing there looking in the camera, and his neck gets really long, and then his head snaps down. Reverse gears.
Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect. All right. So I'm a little smiley. We just started the new intensive group that's getting prepped for the June intensive 12, and the first assignments are coming in. And I'm reading these this morning, and it just tickles me. I've got a great group of thinkers coming in, so I'm pretty excited about that. Keep in mind that we're going to do this again probably in July. I don't have the exact date yet, but if you're interested in attending, be on the lookout for that, because I will announce it, and we will have the application process as we always do. Today's Q&A is another section of yesterday's Coffee and Coaches conference call. It was such a good call. I had to show you this section. So one of the things that we talked about was how we're managing internal forces for things like change of direction, acceleration. We talked a little bit about squatting variations, a very unique squatting variation actually, that addresses some of these internal forces. So if you're confused or you don't have a depth of understanding about what we're talking about when we're talking about internal forces, this is going to be a really, really good call for you. And then we wrapped it up. Zach is a relatively new therapist. He's been out a few years, but he's trying to structure some of his learning. It's like he's not really sure which direction to go. So we talk about how to structure your process as to what you need to attend to, and then what tools you may need to acquire depending on where you are in your career. So again, if you're sort of like confused by this massive quantity of information, you're not sure which way to go, hopefully this will help guide you a little bit. Have an outstanding weekend. I have one spot left over for a 15-minute consultation this weekend. So if you would like that, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Put 15-minute consultation in the subject line, and we will get you set up for that call for the weekend. Again, have an outstanding weekend. I will see you all next week.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So I was watching the video with you and Manuel. That was really interesting. The one with the bands.
That was a really good. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and I was trying to think of a comment Manuel made about what would be like a way to combine kind of the effects of the elastic and the weight releasers. So I was thinking, could you do like if you had a chop with a band that kind of push you into like a cut, and then you release the band and then push out of it, would that be where you would get the acceleration and kind of get that yield into the side that you're cutting into, and then be able to come out of that?
So you're doing a chop, which is an unweighting activity.
Or not a chop, but just have a band at a diagonal, like behind you, just so you get that, just to...
Is it pulling you into it?
Pulling you into it, correct.
Oh, yeah, we do that all the time.
Okay. And that would be a way to kind of combine the elastic and the weight release. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the thing that I would never do, well, I won't say never, but the thing that I typically wouldn't recommend is you got to make sure you release the band tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the way we do that is you wrap it around. You don't put them inside the loop. You put the loop around them, and then you pull it, and then you pull them into the cut, and then you can release one of it, and it swings out of the way, and then they can take off. Yeah. Same thing.
Same concept. Okay. And if you were trying to, I was thinking about, the application of that. If you were trying to drive just the yielding action, it would be counterproductive to kind of push out of that cut, right? Like, because you're going to be driving that impulse, and you're going to be driving that concentric orientation again.
Okay, so on the release of the tension, you're going to get this quick expansion of, because you're taking load away, you're taking the rate and the load away, so you're going to get this really quick expansion of the yield.
Expansion of the yield. What is that?
So I'm pulling you into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a higher tension and a higher rate of movement. Okay, connective tissue stiff.
Mm-hmm.
Take away the magnitude by releasing the band. there's a very quick release of there's a quick expansion. So I get the yield at the end of the cut. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
A lot of energy storage. And then it's like, okay, do I want to dampen that and emphasize the yield, or do I want to turn it in the other direction?
And
Take the stored energy and release it. You see what I'm saying?
yeah. So it just depends on the intent of the activity. If you're just driving yield, you would just stop there and allow for that yield to kind of time.
Yes. So you dampen it, and it just spreads out, right? All the force spreads out through the system, and then you teach them to dampen those forces. So if I had somebody that, I don't know, was having trouble with like a decelerative kind of an activity, right? And I want to teach them to yield and absorb that more effectively, that would be one of those strategies that you could use. I'm just going to pull you into your cut and then hold it and stick, just like if you were landing a jump and stick kind of a situation.
Gotcha. And you could use the band the other way if you're trying to decrease that contact time. So if it's pulling you out of the cut, right?
Yeah, okay. But you got to be careful with that. Like overspeed stuff's a little iffy.
Okay. I was just, because I have a post-op ACL, and so that she's like, that ground contact time is really, really high. So we're still working on range of motion type stuff, but kind of thinking ahead of time, just for her to increase that impulse.
Okay, perfect. That literally, you said the word I was going to use as soon as you stopped talking. This is perfect. It's the impulse that you want. Okay.
Yes.
So you literally put her where you want her, and you go, right? Okay. So you teach her to feel the impulse that she's going to use at the turnaround, right?
Okay.
Teach her to do that, so she feels that, and then take it away, and then have her do her activity. You see it?
Yeah.
So you're teaching her how to produce that impulse at the turnaround,
as opposed to feeding it to her. She's creating.
I don't like to yank people out of a position because number one, they're not. I'm producing the force.
Yeah.
Right. And so from a coordinative standpoint, it's not the same. Right. It doesn't mean that I can't put her in that position and get her to feel like how she's going to, she's got to push into the ground. Otherwise I pull her off base. Right. Yeah. And so she feels the impulse, she's pushing into the ground repeatedly. And then it's like, okay, do the exact same thing, but instead of me pulling on the band, you push yourself out of this now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like, it's like towing. You know what I mean? You ever seen like the overspeed with rubber bands where people do towing and they think it makes people fast. They tend to put the brakes on.
Yeah.
Those circumstances. And so it tends to not be a great strategy under most circumstances. And so this way though, she can feel the impulse.
Gotcha. And I also had a question regarding just the internal forces and the gut. So part of that conversation was, the acceleration and being able to modulate the speed of the guts relative to the body, to the canister. Yep. But I think one of the things I was thinking about was the pressurization. So the breath holding, that's going to limit, just like it would for the appendicular skeleton, like the movement. It's going to lock it. It's going to decrease the displacement of the guts, right, with the internal pressure.
Okay. Yes, but all right.
Okay.
So you think about pressure from the outside in. All right. I can still get flow. So if you think about like the widest part of the circumference of the cylinder, right? Okay. I'm still going to get movement. Potentially it's less depending on magnitude and such, right? But it's still moving. It still has mass and it still has velocity. So it still has momentum.
Okay. The pressure isn't high enough to eliminate the.
I hope not. That would hurt.
Okay. Yeah, that was just one of the things, but it would decrease relative to like just as a continuum.
Potentially,
if you're able to.
It depends on how much excursion that you do have up and down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But decreasing the pressure, the internal or the pressure from the breath it would be a gradient as well, right? Where the more
Correct.
you're able to breath. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So at max P breath hold, it would have the least amount of movement, right? But the impulse would be very, very high. And then you release it, and then there's your velocity.
So sometimes I've seen you do bands with like a hanging weight. So the band is not attached to a rack or anything. It's free flowing, but it's
On the bar.
like a kettlebell and it's on the bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can you describe what's going on with the guts in that application?
Perfect. Okay. So here's what I want you to think about here. So I did a video. This is on a video, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
And I was hanging kettlebells off the side.
Yeah. Because I'll tell you, like I've used that as well. Not so much for squats, but more for like push press to get to work on the rebound.
Yes. Okay. So that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about the internal forces here. So when you've got the rubber band attached to the bar and then you're going to move the bar, what I want you to think about is make the kettlebell the guts on the initial movement. Okay. So if I press up, it's kind of like you ever watch Bugs Bunny Roadrunner cartoons? So the cliff breaks away and Wile E. Coyote's standing there looking in the camera, and his neck gets really long and then his head snaps down.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse gears. Okay. So I lift the load up. So I'm pushing the bar up, but the kettlebell stays put, and then the rubber band elongates, and then the kettlebell comes. The guts are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that kettlebell does on that initial push, that's what the guts are doing, right? So they're going to push down on whatever they're able to push down on. So like if we're talking about like the root of the mesentery where they're actually attached to the spine, they're actually going to pull down on the spine, or whatever guts can push down into the pelvic outlet, they're going to push into the pelvic outlet. And so it's going to create like that trampolining effect, right? That you see externally in the rubber band and the kettlebell. Guts are doing the same thing.
So in the case of a squat, then as you go down, there's a moment where I guess you're probably moving faster than the kettlebell. I think the kettlebell is kind of staying put. Then you go down and then they follow.
Depending on how fast you go, you are absolutely correct.
Okay.
Right. But so again, so the guts they're fluid, they're in a bag, and they're surrounded by fluid. So this is like as close to frictionless as you can imagine. Otherwise, it'd be really uncomfortable just to walk across the room because you'd be feeling your guts all the time. So it's kind of like, post-Thanksgiving dinner is a great way to represent how uncomfortable the guts can be, right? So they're sliding up and down through this piston of your body, right? The faster you move your body, there's always a delay internally, right? So if I go really, really slow, the kettlebell really doesn't move all that much unless you got like a really elastic rubber band, right? So I can control the descent, and the kettlebell kind of comes down with me, and there's really no elongation until you get to like the turnaround, and maybe there's a little bit, okay? But if I go down really fast, the kettlebell stays up. That's what the guts are doing. The guts are staying up, and then they slam down with the kettlebell.
All right. So my question is going to get away from like the specific application type stuff for a second, but kind of want to get your perspective on like goal setting. So I guess kind of like was asking, like the reason I'm asking this question is what I'm realizing is like there's so much out there that I want to learn, which like is kind of like the cool part about this field. I think for a lot of us that like to the day we die, like there's always something new to learn, but that also I kind of find myself getting lost a little bit in terms of like direction of where I want to go with things. So I know you do like a lot of mentorship with people, I'm assuming of all ages. So kind of just wanted to hear your perspective on like how you try to help direct people in terms of like setting goals for themselves, both short-term and long-term, to stay like a little more focused.
Okay. So you're what, 2 years out?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're still in consumption mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you do is based on consumption because you're building representations and understanding and adding tools. So you need a regular exposure to tools that give you access to the system, right? So that would be your manual skills or anything that would be associated with that. So from a priority standpoint, your continuing education that you pay money for, travel for, probably needs to revolve around tools. Okay. The education side of things that would be information based is to capture perspectives of understanding, right? So I have a perspective of understanding, right? And then there are others. And the more of those that you can understand, the more earned your opinions can be. And then the rest is gap filling as to when somebody says one thing and somebody says another, well, how do you figure out what your answer would be to that? So that's what you invest in. And that's about probably 20% of what you need to be doing. Okay. But what I would do to determine like what direction you need to go is what flips your skirt. Okay. What are you interested in? And you start there. I don't think that there's like one way to do this. I think that you sort of have to start with something that gets you excited about something or you're interested in, and then you do that first, and then that sort of leads you to the next thing and to the next thing. I don't think you need a plan. I think you need to start, because plans never go as planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just do something, and then you do the next thing, and you do the next thing. I don't think there's a right way. Whenever you need a broader understanding, then you go in that direction. So like they're using anatomy as a representation of something. So sometimes, well, it's not even sometimes. Every student I've ever worked with sucked at anatomy. Right? Everybody's really good with like the superficial muscles, right? Everybody knows pecs and lats, glutes, right? All the big stuff that people like to look at. And then it's like they get lost when we start talking about other things, right? When you talk about where things are, it's always good to learn that in context versus trying to do rote memorization. Like don't buy an anatomy app and start just staring at a muscle. You say, why would this muscle do this? And when would it be useful for me to understand what this thing is doing? Like when we talk about a knee, right? Really cool muscles that influence knees are like the anterior compartment of the lower leg, the vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and then you can kind of learn stuff about those things. That's how you would accumulate that type of an awareness. But like I said, you just say, okay, what tool excites me? Do that. Okay. And then where do I need more understanding? Do I need to understand, the influence of pelvis orientation? Okay. And then that's going to lead you to anatomy. And then that's going to lead you to gait. And then that's going to lead you to force production versus range of motion. You see, it just kind of builds out. Yeah. So again, you start with what you're excited about. Do that. Okay. And again, it's all based on you. It's like, so, Nikki's excited about one thing, right? Nikki. And then Zach's going to be excited about something else, and neither one is wrong. Okay. But I would offer that one of the mistakes that I made very early on is that I tried to remember stuff. And I would say that you need to write. Like anything that you think you understand, anything that you discover, anything that seems like a conflict, anything that becomes a question, you need to write it down. Right? Because that's going to help organize your brain.
Yeah, and I haven't I started taking like students recently on like their like full-time rotations, and like for them, like as we go over different things, like writing it down so like they have like it to reference later on. And like I definitely have found that really helpful in terms of like just cementing my understanding of things in terms of like writing it out.
Right. Yes, all of my students get a notebook. Yeah. And I make them write it like with a pen and paper. Retention is better. Don't let them type into a computer.
They'll hate me.
Frederick's got the notebook. Yeah. No, it's like retention is just better. So so all the intensive people that are coming in June, they get a notebook because there's no manual. Yeah, they have to write.
Back to the Stone Age.
Thank you for that tremendous insult, Zach. I appreciate that.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, me and Fred Flintstone hang out at the bar after work, right?